They call 3 a.m. the witching hour for a reason. In the medical field, we joke about it, but deep down, every nurse and orderly knows it's true. People die at 3 a.m. Fevers spike at 3 a.m., and if you work at an assisted living facility like I did, 3 a.m. is when the residents who are supposed to be asleep start talking to people who aren't there. I worked the graveyard shift at Greenwood Senior Care. It was a sprawling, single-story building that smelled of lavender cleaning spray and old age. My station was at the junction of Hallway A and Hallway B. From my desk, I could see down both corridors. It was a Tuesday, dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the oxygen machines and the occasional rattle of the ice maker in the break room. I was fighting to stay awake, drinking my third coffee and scrolling through YouTube. I remember I clicked on a video titled 3 True Scary Stories from the Night Shift, thinking it would keep my adrenaline up. At exactly 3:03 a.m., a call light went on. Beep. I looked at the board. Room 104. That was Mrs. Higgins' room. She was a sweet lady, 92 years old, mostly non-verbal. She hadn't used her call button in the 6 months I'd been there. I walked down Hallway A. The linoleum squeaked under my sneakers. I pushed open the door to 104. "Mrs. Higgins?" I whispered. "Did you need something?" She was sitting bolt upright in bed, staring at the empty corner of the room. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "He won't stop whispering," she rasped. I looked at the corner. "Who, sweetie? There's nobody there." "The tall man," she said. "He says he's thirsty." A chill went down my spine. I checked the windows, locked. I checked the bathroom, empty. I reassured her, gave her some water, and turned off the light. As I walked back to the desk, another light went on. Beep. Room 106, Mr. Davies, right next door to Mrs. Higgins. I walked in. Mr. Davies was awake, clutching his blanket. "Is everything okay, Arthur?" I asked. "Tell that man to leave, standing in the corner like that. It's rude." My stomach dropped. "Which corner, Arthur?" He pointed to the same corner of the room that Mrs. Higgins had stared at. "Right there, the tall one. He says he's thirsty." I backed out of the room. 2 residents seeing the same thing, hearing the same words. I went back to the nurse's station and pulled up the security camera feed on the computer. We had cameras in the hallways, but not the rooms. I rewound the footage to 3 a.m. I watched myself sitting at the desk. I watched the hallway. It was empty. But then, at 3:02 a.m., just before the first light went on, the camera at the end of hallway A flickered. A shadow moved. It wasn't walking on the floor. It looked like it was unfolding from the ceiling. It was a shape, tall, impossibly thin. It looked like a stick figure made of black smoke. It slithered down the wall and slipped under the door of room 104. I watched the screen, my hand over my mouth. A minute later in the footage, I saw myself walk down the hall to check on Mrs. Higgins. As I entered the room, the shadow slipped out behind me, crawled along the ceiling, and slid under the door of room 106. I was seeing it on the screen, but I hadn't seen it in real life. Suddenly, every single call light on the board lit up at once. Beep, beep, beep. Room 108, 110, 112, all of them. And from down the hallway, in the heavy silence of 3:30 a.m., I heard a voice. It wasn't coming from a room. It was coming from the air vent right above my head. "I'm still thirsty." I locked myself in the medication room and called the police. They did a sweep. They found nothing. But the next morning, 3 of the residents on hallway A passed away in their sleep, all from dehydration. I don't work the night shift anymore, and I never, ever look at the corners of a room at 3 a.m. Working retail during the holidays is a nightmare. Working the closing shift alone during the holidays is a death wish. I worked at a big box clothing store in a strip mall. By 11 p.m., all the other stores in the strip, the bakery, the nail salon, the gym, were closed and dark. My store was the only beacon of light in a sea of asphalt. It was a snowy night. I had just locked the front doors and was counting the cash registers. The storefront is made entirely of glass, so while I'm counting money, I'm basically on display to anyone outside. I happened to look up and noticed a vehicle in the parking lot. It was an old, beat-up red pickup truck. It was parked way in the back, right under a flickering street lamp. The engine was off, but the windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. I didn't think much of it. Maybe someone's car broke down. I went back to counting. 5 minutes later, I looked up again. The red truck had moved. It was no longer in the back row. It was now in the middle row, directly facing the front doors. No lights. I hadn't heard an engine. It had just glided closer. I felt a little unease, but I tried to brush it off. I remembered watching a video called My Stalker Story Animated and told myself I was just letting my imagination run wild because of the internet. I finished the registers and went to the back to grab my coat and purse. I had to exit through the front doors because the back alarm was faulty. I walked to the front, keys in hand, ready to leave. I looked through the glass. The red truck had moved again. It was now parked right up against the curb, directly in front of the doors. It was idling now. The exhaust was puffing white smoke into the cold air. I couldn't leave. If I walked out, I'd be 2 feet away from the driver's door. I backed away from the glass and hid behind a rack of clearance coats. I pulled out my phone to call mall security, but then I realized the mall security went home at 10 p.m. I decided to wait them out. I sat on the floor, peeking through the clothes. 10 minutes passed. The truck didn't move. Then, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was huge. He was wearing a thick mechanic's jumpsuit and a ski mask rolled up like a beanie. He didn't look at the store. He walked around to the trunk of his truck and pulled something out. It was a tire iron. He walked up to the glass doors. He didn't smash them. He just tapped the tire iron against the glass. Tink, tink, tink. He was smiling. He wasn't looking at the register where I usually stood. He was looking right at the coat rack where I was hiding. He knew exactly where I was. "I know you're in there, Sarah," he shouted. His voice was muffled by the glass. "Come out, it's cold." My heart stopped. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I had never seen this truck before. He raised the tire iron and smashed the glass. Crash! The alarm started screaming. It was deafening. The man didn't run. He stepped through the broken glass, crunching over the shards. I scrambled back, crawling on my hands and knees toward the fitting rooms. I locked myself in the handicap stall and stood on the toilet so he wouldn't see my feet. I could hear him walking through the store. He was whistling a Christmas song. "Sarah," he sang, "come out, come out." He was taking his time. He was enjoying the hunt. I heard him tearing down clothes racks. I heard him flipping tables. He was getting closer to the fitting rooms. Then I heard sirens. Thank God, someone had heard the alarm or the crash. The man stopped whistling. I heard heavy boots running toward the back emergency exit. The door slammed open, triggering the secondary alarm. By the time the police got me out of the bathroom, he was gone. But they found something in his truck, which he had left running at the curb. They found a notebook. It had dates, times, descriptions of my outfits for the last 2 weeks. And on the passenger seat, there was a roll of duct tape, zip ties, and a shovel. He hadn't just seen me that night. He had been watching me for a month. I quit the next day. I don't go to strip malls at night anymore, and I always check the parking lot before I even walk out the door. Isolation does funny things to your brain. I work as a night watchman for a lumber yard in the Pacific Northwest. It's a massive property, acres of stacked wood, surrounded by dense forest and a chain-link fence. My job is to drive the perimeter in a golf cart and make sure no teenagers are trying to steal plywood or set fires. It pays well, but you are completely, utterly alone. The nearest town is 20 miles away. It was last Friday night. A thick fog had rolled in off the mountains. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. I was doing my 2 a.m. rounds. The floodlights on the poles created these eerie cones of yellow light in the mist. I was driving slowly past Stack 4, the cedar planks, when I saw something. It looked like a person standing on top of a pile of lumber, about 20 feet in the air. I stopped the cart. "Hey!" I yelled. "Get down from there! Private property!" The figure didn't move. In the fog, it looked like a mannequin, just stiff and motionless. I shined my spotlight up. As the beam hit the figure, it dropped. It didn't jump, it didn't climb down, it just dropped flat, disappearing behind the stacks of wood. I grabbed my radio to call the sheriff, but all I got was static. That happens sometimes with the fog, so I wasn't too worried yet. I figured it was some kids on a dare. I drove around the corner of the stack to cut them off. There was nobody there. I got out of the cart, flashlight in hand. "I'm calling the cops," I bluffed. "Come out now!" Silence. Just the wind in the trees. I walked back to my cart. As I sat down, I noticed something on the seat. It was a wood carving, a small, crude carving of a horse. It was fresh. The wood was still wet with sap. I hadn't left it there. I was the only one with a key to the gate. I felt a sudden wave of panic. I threw the carving on the ground and hit the gas, heading back to the main security shack. As I drove, I passed the security cameras mounted on the poles. I usually glance up at them out of habit. On every single pole I passed, there was someone standing at the base. They were wearing dark clothes that blended into the wood. They weren't moving. They were just watching me drive by. One by Stack 6, one by Stack 8, two by the main gate. There wasn't just an intruder. There was a group, a pack. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The little electric cart whined. I looked in my rearview mirror, and out of the fog behind me, 3 figures were sprinting. They weren't running like people run. They were running on all fours, galloping like animals, and they were gaining on the cart. I crashed the cart into the door of the security shack, scrambled inside, and locked the steel deadbolt. I grabbed the landline, thank God for landlines, and dialed 911. While I was on the phone, the banging started. Not on the door, on the roof. Thump, thump, thump. They were on top of the shack. "I'm on the roof!" I screamed to the operator. Then the power to the shack was cut. The lights died, the heater died. I sat in the dark, clutching a flare gun, listening to them scratching at the metal roof like rats trying to chew through. They were whispering to each other, a language of clicks and hisses that didn't sound human. The police arrived 10 minutes later with sirens blaring. The scratching stopped immediately. The cops found the yard empty. No footprints in the mud, which was impossible. No sign of entry at the fence. But they found the cart overturned, and all over the outside of the security shack were scratches, deep gouges in the metal like a bear had tried to get in. And on the window of the shack, written in the condensation, were the words, "We want to play." I didn't go back for my next shift. I don't care how good the money is. There are things in those woods that were there long before we started cutting down their trees. If you value your sanity, stay in bed at night. But if you want to hear more stories that make you double-check your locks, go ahead and hit that like button. And for more true horror, subscribe to Mr. Hunting.